Hi, everyone, and welcome to Always Be Reading. I'm Chantel, and tonight is the night where we get to finish up the conversation that started last week about Parable of the Talents. I'm excited to be joined with Stephanie, my friend who's back, to finish up this conversation. And there's so much to talk about. We cannot wait to get into it, and I don't want to use a whole lot of time to steal away time from that conversation. But before I begin, I just want to say that this book, Parable of the Talents, is the second book in Octavia Butler's Earth Seed series. And it follows the life of Lauren, our protagonist in the story, and her daughter. Really, I would say her daughter really is the one leading the story. And we get to see the life that Lauren lived through the letters that she left in her journals that she wrote. If you have not yet had a chance to listen to the first part of our conversation, please do that. I think it will be rewarding to you. But we're so delighted that you're here to listen to our second part of the conversation tonight. So without further ado, Stephanie, welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's jump on in to this book. And I was thinking a lot about just our last conversation leading up, preparing myself for tonight. You look beautiful, by the way. I'm loving the blue. Thanks. And the hair. Yeah, you look beautiful. And thank you. And so I was like, there's so much to think about. I think that Octavia gives readers that 2 hours, even though I'm glad that we booked another hour for this, we know it's not enough.
It's not enough. In fact, when you said to finish it, I was like, oh, I don't know that I'll ever be finished with this book. I mean, there is absolutely this notion of sort of how powerful this book is and all of the different threads through here. And I know last time we talked, we kept saying, we'll talk about motherhood next time. We'll talk about the sort of female stuff next time. And now we're at this next time. And this is part of what I want to wrestle with a lot, because there's a lot about what it means to give birth, whether it's to things or ideas or possibility. And what is the responsibilities associated with that? I think before I came in here, and I feel like I'm talking too much at the start, but one thing I wanted to think about was the book opens and ends basically on the story. What is the parable? The parables in the Bible. And this book opens where she almost, the parables are basically about what are the talents that you're given? How do you make of the talents what you will? And God rewards for your ability to make of what he has granted you. And in this book, in the beginning, she talks about how she kind of hid her parable amongst the mountains, which is really what I didn't want in the stories of the parables from the Bible. And so and she's struggling with, how should I be doing more? How should I put it out there? Am I not doing enough? And I just thought, I don't know what that means when you give birth to something. Like, what is your responsibility to it? Do you have to, like, at all, against all odds, like pound the pavement, get out there, like unrelenting? Or do you slow and nurture and allow it to take deeper root and seed?
Right. Wow. That is, so my mind is going to, with that question. Obviously it's such a great question, because we see that there's different births in the story. So there is the physical birth of a child, right, that she has. And then there's this birth of her belief system that she has. And then I think there's also the birth of a community, right? That she has. And I think that it's such a great question, Stephanie. And it's such a question that is challenging for women, because we see that her child obviously didn't get to experience the same type of nurture that her community benefited from and her belief system. But that's also because her child was taken away from her. And what we didn't see is we didn't see a mother who stopped searching and wanting her child. Although the daughter has thoughts about that, right?
Well, that's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up because I really struggle with the narrative that her daughter puts forth. It
Yeah.
is it is a victim
Mm-hmm.
martyr role and anger and disappointment and
Yes.
probably a lot of hurt
Yes.
built on top of that. And yet through the stories, it's obvious that her mother kept searching for her, kept putting herself out there, kept putting herself in harm's way in the efforts to find her daughter.
Yeah, I
And
really struggled with that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I'm glad you struggled with it a little bit too, because
I struggled with it a lot, actually. And I
yeah.
struggled with it in two ways. So, one, I struggled with it. Well, my biggest struggle was, does this make sense, like, for the story? So I struggled with it. I'm struggling with Octavia on this part because I think that we meet her daughter, or we meet her daughter when her daughter is a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we're not getting the thoughts and feelings of adolescence, is what I'm saying.
Oh, where we would normally have those sort of like emotional,
Right.
less.
Or like the emotions of when you're a child and you're a mom and you tell your kids stories, and you have experiences that even when you share them with them, you know that these are experiences that they can't fully step into understanding. They've got to live more life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
They're
they
not
have
going to
to
get
live
it
more
yet.
life,
Yeah.
right? They're not going to get it.
No.
And I think that, but when they're older, right? When they're older, and I know this has happened to me as a things I can recall my parents telling me things when I was younger, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I totally get it. But I couldn't get it then
Mm-mm.
because I just didn't have the life experience. And so part of my challenge, it's one of the only places of struggle as far as how it was written, is this aspect that Ashe is it Ashe or Asha? I
I
think
think it's Asha Veer.
Ashavir, right. She
Yeah.
is, we're meeting her in adulthood. She has lived some life. She has had experiences herself, and she should be able to, at some basic level. So I'm not saying she shouldn't have her feelings of disappointment and all of that. But at a basic level, what she should have is she should be able to see my mother was a victim.
Yeah.
I was taken away from my mom, right? Like this happened to me. I had this experience. I was taken away from my mom. But yes, and I was also taken away from my mom. Like this also happened to her. And to your point, I did not see I think it was hard for me to see this part of the narrative as reliable, maybe because
That's a really
when she
interesting
was
point.
reading,
Yeah.
like, so if I'm I'm going into this, I'm suspending my disbelief and I'm going on this journey. At the beginning of it, nope, don't have that expectation because she's experiencing these journals and this story is unfolding as how I'm reading it, as we're reading it, right?
Yep.
So as she's reading her mother's story, and to your point, as she is witnessing and seeing, through what she's reading, my mother was still looking for me. The pain that was caused because I was absent from her, and how she still was searching for me all this time. That truth never changed her, like it didn't.
No, she was
It's like
hardened.
she just kept this one grounded truth, and I don't know where that truth came from, because what we also didn't see, I like, did it come from, like, maybe she was indoctrinated by the people that just were like, your mother abandoned you, you know? But we didn't get that sense of that strong message that they gave her.
I have a wondering. I wonder if two things. I don't know if Octavia had children. So I'm sort of curious about that and
Mhm.
how that may or may not have informed her experience and her approach.
Right?
And two, I'm actually kind of curious about whether or not we would have seen a little bit more of a connection in the book 3.
Book 3.
Knowing that there would have been a book 3,
Yeah.
knowing that they were leaving to go to another planet, knowing that there might have been an aha moment and
Mhm.
that Lauren stayed behind. There may
Right.
have been this moment of reconnection, and
Mhm.
because you're right, it's unsatisfying, right? You know,
Unsatisfying.
you see this daughter who is also abused in her own right or
Yeah.
mistreated,
Mhm.
and you see her being embraced, at least by Marcus, who I
Mhm.
think Marcus is who twisted the stories. I think it was
Right.
Marcus who fed her the stories about, your mother cared more about Earthseed than about
Right.
you. Your
Right.
mother cared more about creating this community than about you. And that
Mhm.
was because he didn't want them to ever, I think he thought he could keep that truth from her. So
Right.
that way he didn't have to wrestle with the fact that he abandoned Lauren,
Right.
that he was part of a movement that enslaved him and his sister, that mistreated
Mhm.
them, that abused them, and that he stayed with.
Mhm.
And
He was his
so,
own type of greedy. Yeah.
yeah,
In
yeah.
that way. He was his own type of greedy. Yeah, it's really interesting. I just it's I think that I was more struggled with, put off her response to what it was that she read and took in, you
Do you think
know?
you would see this book differently if you weren't a mom? Would you have been able to be more empathetic to Ashavir's perspective?
I think I still would have expected something, even if she didn't stay in it, some type of reaction, because she reacted to the other parts of her mother's story, you
Yeah.
know? But there wasn't, I just didn't see an emotional connection or
In
even a
fact, remember she said, I didn't want to
or
love this woman. I didn't
yeah,
want to feel
yeah,
for her.
yeah, she didn't want to feel. And I'm wondering, I think maybe what would have helped if there was more understanding of where that came from, you
Mm.
know? Because we know that, like, and maybe it came like from the uncle, which I can see, but I don't think it was maybe pronounced enough for me to for it to be, I think it was just a little unbelievable in that, like, sense that something didn't, there wasn't a struggle. There wasn't a something, because the child that is hurt and angry and standoffish is also the child that wants an embrace from their parent.
Right.
You know,
I would have expected that there was a breakthrough at a certain point when she
at a
read
certain
the
point.
extent to which she had gone through to put feelers out, to go back and forth,
Exactly.
to find out where her daughter may have been,
Exactly. And what she
to even
read.
put herself in danger to get that
Exactly.
information, that she would have felt moved or touched or emotional. And she
Exactly.
really didn't.
She
It,
didn't.
it
And also, she didn't respond in that way to what she learned about her uncle.
no.
You know, she didn't respond. I so that I understand it's a great tension and plot, but I just wished it was I wish that part were written a little differently.
Do you think it also is because the people that she was taken in by were
Mhm.
such, like, she could identify that even though they were pseudo parents, that they had never really embraced the role of parent, but that
Mhm.
the mother was so domineering and unempathetic towards her, that maybe she projected that kind of role of mother even onto her own mother. And so she projected that sort of belief in earthseed instead of understanding that that was all tied to her mother's tenderness.
Right. I think that, like, I totally can see where there was this. I mean, she has the mother that raised her, which is not a mother at all.
No.
She, which was it was
Sort of
not
what a mother shouldn't be, right?
what a mother shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And then he's reading, right? So after I've grown up with this is my reality. And then I am meeting the mother, and all she sees all throughout these pages is mothering.
Yeah.
Because Lauren is mothering.
Yes.
And she's mothering through tragedy.
Yes.
She's mothering through in celebration. She's mothering in mourning. She's mothering with tons of questions. She's mothering through uncertainty. But Lauren is always mothering. And so I can appreciate the anger and resentment and frustration of her not, like, she should have been the ultimate one to receive that type of mothering and benefit. And she wasn't able to receive any of it. And I can get that. What I can't, what is hard is that she never saw her mother as a victim too. Like, this
I
was
agree.
done to her too. I
Yes.
think if her mother was like, if the story was like, you know what, the best decision right now is, like, if it went like this, Bencoli took the baby, or she had let him take her because Lauren was like, I'm not leaving Acorn,
Yeah.
right? And then he took the baby and left. So that is the thing of, my mother gave me up.
Right.
But that is not what happens. That I was stolen and taken from my mother in the most violent ways.
And she was desperate to find me.
She was desperate.
Yeah.
So I'm like, so the response to that, when you read that, you know what I mean? If I read that as a child, my response would be different. Not that it would melt away all my anger and things that happen in my wishes, but something would be different, I think.
Well, I mean, so maybe, I'm curious about this, because I wonder if, Octavia likes to put us in really uncomfortable spaces all the time, right? And so maybe she did want us to be uncomfortable with what should be natural, right? So it's this sort of should be natural to want to be reunified with your mother, to have a innate desire. And I think that's part of what I'm curious about. Like, I've always heard, like, that children are, like, driven to love their parents. But in this particular case, she's obviously not that character. And also, so is that true or not true? And also, I do have to think about, like, the sexual abuse that she endured at the stepfather, and how that played a role in her building these walls and closing her up. And rather than finding commonality with the abuse that obviously her mother suffered too, that she didn't want to be like her mother. So she kind of envisioned a fantasy, because it's hard to make peace with the fact that you can both be abused that way.
Yeah. I can see that. I mean, I think that she just is a hard person to love, and there's a hard thing to break through for her because of what happened to her. It's interesting because, and you bring up such an interesting point as well, when you say that Octavia likes to put us in uncomfortable situations and not to do the predictable. And I appreciate that. I think, like, you have two women whose lives are very different, but who actually have a lot in common. Both of their beginnings were, interrupted, removed, from family. one by force, one, also forced to leave because there was destruction and devastation. And so, and both were,
they're both persistent. They're both resilient.
They both were resilient. And so, but you see two different choices.
Yes, that's yes.
Lauren was not, her heart was not hardened. There was something that guarded her heart that it didn't, the evil didn't get to take that. So her heart was able to still care.
Is that tied to the hyper empathy?
You had like a little aha. So
yeah.
I wonder if it's even a commentary on faith and religion.
Mm-hmm.
Because Asha was formed. She grew up in a Christian faith system.
Yep.
Which should be,
and I think system is the right word. Yeah.
Yes, system, forgiveness and love, accepting, welcoming, all of these things, right? And Lauren moved away from, it wasn't the same system, but there were similarities, but she moved away and she created something of her own. And when you compare the two, it's Lauren who had the ability, based on, I think, it's Lauren who had the ability to, there we go, to be able to nurture, to care consistently through the heart. Like her heart wasn't hardened. And I wonder if there's even a commentary about that. Like,
I think it is about choice. And I think that actually sort of connects back to Lauren's perspective about God is change, and you shape it and it shapes you. And so it really, the thing that I loved about Earthseed, and I even bring it into my ideology on a daily basis, is the choices that you make shape you, and you can be shaped by the choices that you make. And so you can choose. Everyone I know has experienced trauma, and to whatever extent it is, it's not a competition. It's not a, whose trauma was worse. Trauma is trauma, and it's relative to the person that experienced it. But it also is, what is the impact on that trauma, and how do you allow it to affect you? Whereas I feel like Lauren's story was, oh, these are more data points. I'm going to have to be more curious about how do I do this and what these people might do. And I felt a little bit, without ganging up on Asha, but that she had a sense of entitlement. Like, I shouldn't have been through this. I shouldn't have experienced this. And I agree. I want nobody to experience that. But there is an entitlement in her that Lauren doesn't seem to have. And I think she's able to navigate that because of Earthseed, because it just is what it is, to use that horrible phrase that everybody hates, right? But to her, it is what it is, and she had to just navigate it.
Well, I think that with the entitlement that you bring up, there's also, I think we talked about it before when we were talking about community, like who's in and who's out.
Yeah.
And how she probably was raised. I mean, just the very air right around were that they were the deplorables.
Yeah.
They were bad. They were dangerous. And so this kind of gets back to a thing I brought up earlier, which now I'm correcting my thought a little bit. It's like maybe the very atmosphere. So maybe it wasn't anything, such directed about her mother, but the very atmosphere that she was around, when you're saying about who's good, who's bad, who's right, who's wrong, who's worthy, who's unworthy. And when you draw a line on a paper, Lauren is on the opposite side of her mother at every point within the world that is her normal, that she grew up in.
Yeah, that's right. That's a really good observation. And we talk a lot, which I love, about conditions for growth, conditions for being stunted, how you have spoken before, which I admire, about training your environment as well as, because otherwise the environment will train you. And I do think that perhaps we have a juxtaposition where Lauren trained her environment. And for Asha, the environment kind of trained her, even though she thought of herself as so rebellious, so different, which I thought was another parallel to her mother too. Her mother always felt like an outsider. She always felt like she saw things that other people didn't see. And yet Asha was in the same kind of perspective in her environment. She didn't necessarily fit in. She did see things that she thought could be different or better. So I find that, it's sort of like, I think we do this as people, like we want to not be like our parents, right? That's something that is sort of deep in a child. Like, I'm not like my mom. No.
And then you get older and you're like, oh my gosh.
I'm exactly
exactly like my mom. Yes.
Right.
And I also think like we have a mother that was present. And Lauren had a stepmother, but Lauren wasn't mothered by her stepmother.
Not at all. No, she was othered, not mothered.
She was othered. So a similar experience, less of the, minus the physical abuse that happened and sexual abuse that happens to Asha. But you had this, she could relate to having a mother figure that was not mothering, and so I think that there's, when I think you opened up talking about the talents.
Yeah.
And when you what I was thinking about was the talent of mothering.
Oh.
And how I had a conversation with Sean about paradise, and there was this whole point about community that came up with in that book about Toni Morrison. But one of the things that is kind of believed in this town, especially it's in the air, like if a woman doesn't want to have a child, or if a woman isn't good at mothering, that means she doesn't like children and something's wrong with her. It's really like, you're not, something's
standard
wrong.
Trope. That's right.
Right. It's a standard trope. And versus, like, do we think that mothering is a talent, or do we think that, well, if a woman is a mother, then she has all the things. She's going to be this, great mother. She has all the things. She's going to want to do it in a certain way. And so I really was like, I wonder if like mothering, and I think that when you open it up as a talent, it widens. I think it allows more women into that space. One of the things that I noticed, and within especially the evangelical Christian space, but I would say probably not just that, and not just Christian, is this elevation of the married woman with child.
Yeah.
The married woman with child. It's like, if you are of a certain age, what do women start getting asked? When are you going to get married? Or when are you going to start having, then when are you going to start having children? Because marriage and children have given women identity, status, purpose. And it's very different when it comes to men. So what happens for the woman who's like, I don't want that for my life? I have some friends that are like, I've never wanted to be a mother. You know what I mean? And they are always having to explain that.
Yes.
And then they say, some people challenge me like, oh, yes, you do. You'll want it once it's yours, like all of these things. Or the women that like, that just didn't happen for me in my life, but I have this full, wonderful life. I've mothered other things, I've nurtured other things versus mothering in such a specific way.
Well, and do you think mothering, so it's interesting too, we could juxtapose mothering and fathering.
Yeah.
Because is the way in which her father fathered her a form of mothering? Not to do like just like word gymnastics or syntax, but I do think that we have a, mothering is about sacrifice at its core. I mean, it's about at all aspects. It's about sacrifice. It's about, it's a little bit like the giving tree. I will, I'll be left as a stump and I'll let you sit here until you die. Right. Like, so it's emptying out of everything that you have and that you become this vessel that is the only thing, your only purpose in life is to give. Whereas fathers have this sort of role of advising, but they get to be separate and complete individuals that don't have to pour everything out and lose everything that is inside them.
Do you think that that's something that women have to?
Or I think it's expected. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I don't know if they have to or don't have to. We're doing a webinar, sweetie. Sorry about that. But speaking of mothering and having children,
right on you, right there.
Right on you. Like, do they have to?
Don't worry. I had one who came in and was like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "This, give me a few minutes."
Yeah, yeah. But I do think that expectation, I mean, I think it's like, I mean, look at all the times in which, like, for a long time, if a child was born and had autism, it was because they were born to a frigid mother. Right. It was the responsibility of the mother. Anything genetically wrong with a child was the mother's fault, or any way in which a child didn't launch was the mother's fault. And so I do think that, maybe Octavia is asking us to look at that sort of trope about, how much she blames her mother and finds almost no fault with Marcus.
With Marcus, who is the closest father figure that she has. This is really fascinating because in Paradise, there is this community of women, and they are able to be free. And it's like 5 women in this house, and they are considered wild and dangerous and deviant by the
women in town,
the men of the town,
right?
And they're a problem. But what's interesting as you bring this topic up, none of their children were with them for one reason or another. One walked away from her kids. One, like, a couple of their children died. Some didn't have kids yet, but none of the there were no children in the space where they could be free. And I wonder, as I'm thinking about Lauren, would she have been able, like, what would her story have looked like had she been able to have her daughter with her the whole time?
I think that's a fabulous question, because I do wonder at those really primitive points of motherhood where, children demand attention, when they're 2, when they're 3, when they're in those very early, both resilient but also fragile states as they move through childhood, and we're demanding of all that attention. What would that have been like for Lauren? Would she have embraced it? Would she have, and what if Asha was always going to be that child that was going to reject?
Right.
And ultimately, isn't that kind of what Lauren did even with her father? Right? Yeah. Like she rejected her father's way, but still honored it.
Yes.
And yet Asha kind of rejected her mother's perspective. So I think being a mom is really hard. I'm just going to say that part out loud.
It is really hard because you don't. It's so funny. I tell this story when I started working full time, and at that time, Kyrie and I, my husband, we were both working remotely, and so my office was on the main floor. His office was downstairs on the lower level. And the kids would come to me all the time for whatever question or need they have. And I'm like, and so one day I said, well, why didn't you ask your dad? Because they literally passed him. They literally passed him.
Walk right by him. What are you? That's right.
I said, why didn't you ask their dad? And they said, oh, Dad's in a meeting. I was like, mom's meeting. But then I was thinking about it and I said, for a child, probably natural, children are trained that their father is not always 100% available
Available.
for them.
Yeah.
Whereas moms, in most cases, are available.
Well, I
Oh,
mean,
I
I think
love
that
that.
starts
I
with
love
nursing.
that. You know?
Yeah.
And it's really, and it's this whole thing. And I experienced that in frustration and unfairness, especially, but it's like this expectation of, no, you got to juggle, figure it out. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? What you're doing, you're going to figure out how to do what you're doing and get the needs met of the kids.
Well, doesn't
And
it tie to nursing? Like when you first nurse,
yeah,
the tatas have to be
that's
available
right.
on
All
demand
the
when they
time.
want it,
Right.
middle of the night,
Yes.
and dad's got
And that's
nothing to do but hand the baby over.
the baby over. Exactly. And that is something. And so I think that the like the woman you use, sacrifice, is such a good word, I think, for mothers in that way. And we saw Lauren do that with her child. I wonder what she would have sacrificed or would have had to sacrifice in her pursuit of building, how it might have slowed down. Or even if Ben Coley didn't die, like what demands would he have made at a certain point as a father, as regarding safety and wanting settledness. And I also but we also see that Lauren sacrificed a lot for Earthseed and her community that she built.
She did. Can we take her, though? I want to talk about that more, but I don't want to lose the thread of motherhood yet in the
Mhm.
motherhood she experienced,
Yeah.
because like her mother died very
Mhm.
young. And so I can't remember exactly. She was like
Yeah.
3 or 4, I
Yeah.
think. Her father got remarried. She had a stepmother. That stepmother wasn't available to her,
Right. Right.
but she was available to her
To
sons
her sons. Hmm.
because they were not of her flesh.
That's
Lauren
right.
was not of her flesh, and therefore,
Mhm.
and I actually was surprised by that, because I will be the first to admit that I have my own biases, where I know men don't tend to want to take care of other people's children.
Mhm.
But I have usually seen women step into the role to caretake for children
Right.
in general. And yet that particular woman, that was her mother, her stepmother, didn't. And yet Lauren forgave her for everything and really tried to make that life easier for her.
I think she also saw too that I think she might have known or sensed that her stepmother was competing with her.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, I'm not in a competition with you. But I think she saw it because the
She was the
relationship
father's only
that
other. Yeah.
Lauren, that they had, the father and daughter had, was such a um it was such a tender relationship, and it was very strong. And I think that the stepmother felt like an outsider to that, and that her husband wasn't maybe fully there. And really, the competition was not so much maybe between her and Lauren, but the boys, her sons and Lauren, like the attention and what they got. Because remember, the son that was the most wayward, I think,
Kevin or
yes,
Keith.
was the one that
Yeah.
she was
Yeah.
one that it was her heart and protected.
Yeah.
And the father was trying to father him, but she experienced that as not, supporting him fully. He was being too hard on him and all
Yeah.
of that stuff. And then she had to look and see, well, everything that he does for Lauren and how he treats Lauren. So I think that that's where her competition and resentment came from, with Lauren. And I think Lauren was able to see that she still wanted to have relationships with her brothers. I don't think that she held that against them. And I
Is
think
that
that
part of that hyper empathy though? Like, I mean,
I
we
think so.
haven't talked a lot about that because
Yeah, I
even the
think so.
notion of having characters who have
Yeah,
something called hyper
hyper
empathy
empathy. Yeah,
as juxtaposed to people who
yeah,
have a little empathy
yeah,
or not much empathy
yeah.
or yeah.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I have so Leela, my oldest, she is very intuitive emotionally, and I always say she when she's in a room, she is concerned and taking notes of all the hearts in the room. Like she's always done that, and I sense it. I see how she moves in a space.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I imagine, what if there was this hyperness, you know what I'm saying, to it?
Yeah.
Because I think what the book focuses a lot on when there is pains or pleasures
Hmm.
and she's impacted. But I also would imagine that it's not maybe so much a cut on and off switch. It might be to the degrees, right? It might be more of a like a gradient or range, right? And so I wonder if she's able to have a sense of where people are emotionally. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
no, that's fascinating. I do think that, I wonder if maybe Layla would fall under being hyper empathetic in our
Mhm,
world. Like maybe we have a
mhm,
different,
a
um,
different definition.
yeah, or a different scale.
Mhm,
Maybe we've sort of gotten a little bit less, the whole keep calm and carry on, like the rise of
right,
stoicism,
right.
the like, has sort of blunted,
Mhm.
or even the level to which we are exposed to heighten things around like porn addictions
Yes.
and
Yeah.
violence and so all of that does is dull our empathy,
Yeah.
dull our ability to actually see that as something that's horrifying and something that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
So I am curious about it. I wonder maybe if you could just sort of describe or define for our audience what that hyper empathy was, because I don't know that they would know what we're talking about.
In the sense of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hyper empathy, they are also known as sharers. And so it actually is a gift or an ability that was birthed out of, I think it was
It was a
like
virus.
a virus.
Oh, or was it a drug that they
No,
had
it was a
used?
drug related.
That's
It was
right.
drug related. And so much like if you kind of think of alcohol fetal syndrome,
Hmm.
this so there the that the fetus is impacted literally kind of in these cases drunk, right? Intoxicated, addicted to alcohol. And so when they're born marked by that in some way, right? And
Hmm.
so with this particular drug that I can't remember the name of,
It's like
uh,
Parcital
yeah,
or
one of the
hmm.
um, lingering effects and how it changes is that children are born hypersensitive um, to I would say sensory
Experiences around
experiences,
them. Yeah. When
experiences
somebody's in
around
pain,
them,
like
and they
there were
share it.
stories where she would see somebody hurt, right?
Yeah,
And
and
she would
she
have to
would
not look
look.
because if she saw it, she
It
would
would break
feel
her.
it.
Yeah, and she would feel it. And so we get to learn more about this as she's learning about it and having different experiences. And like all things, people develop coping mechanisms, and they also understand that this is something that isn't good for people to know that you have, because people could take advantage of you, especially in the times that, they were living in when the world was all, chaotic. And so she would have to turn away or not see and it kind of takes you out. So if someone was shot, and she would feel that and like wake up, or I would say wake up or come to, after that, and still experience some of the pain, not the physical pain and the emotional pain, but she also experienced heightened pleasure. So when
Mhm.
people were having
Happy.
sex near her,
Mhm.
happy, she would experience, that as well. So that's kind of my understanding,
No, I think that's an excellent definition. Thank you. And I hope
Mhm.
it's okay that we pause to let people know,
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I wonder about the creation of hyper empathy
Mhm.
in the story. And
Mhm.
was there something Octavia wanted us to learn about the promise, the peril? And it was almost like another character,
Yeah.
because different people had it, different
Yeah.
people didn't. They would be looking for each other, like, oh,
Yeah.
is that one of the sharers? I can tell you're a sharer. You winced when somebody
Mhm.
experienced something. And
Mhm.
like, I was always curious, even in the first book, the why that was a necessary almost motif or experience to bring through the book.
I kind of saw it as it was one of the aspects that was looked at as a negative thing within society, but it was actually one of the things that made her skill set and gift, which I think, to sum up Lauren, I would say Lauren is a shepherd.
I
Um, to
agree.
make her shepherd well possible. That the level of not just knowing maybe your story, but feeling your story, that like feeling your pain, being able to know people like that, like almost like emotional intelligence, to
Hmm.
be able to move and navigate and corral, keep people safe. I think that it's actually, a gift. And I think that we saw that part of her develop
Yeah.
as the story, went on.
Don't you find that the character of Lauren had this incredible sureness?
Hmm.
Like, she just always knew what to do. She
Yeah.
always knew what the next move was. She
Mhm.
always, and I envied that in her
Mhm.
character. So I envied her resilience. I envied her ability to sort of like the stoic sort of like, okay, what's next? This is what we need to do.
Right.
And the sense to which she seemed to be able to read people so well
Yeah.
and so quickly that enabled her to stay safe once she was out of, they turned Acorn into basically a camp, abuse camp or a slave camp. Um, uh, and she just had that third, like that third sense, that third eye, that like all knowingness.
Yes. Yeah. I think because there is a connectedness that maybe she had with people, or into people, an awareness that she had that gave her a different type of an ability. The other thing is that Lauren just was able to care for people in different ways,
Yeah. Yeah.
and not everybody has that gift. That's why I'm like, oh, you're a shepherd. Not everybody is a shepherd, you know? Not
Yeah.
everybody is concerned. Like I one of my favorite parts is when after the raid came and the children were taken away, and she was like, I'm gonna go get back my daughter, right? Which, yes, I've got to find her. And so they make, after they like burn it down, and they make a plan. But she also was like, all the children.
Yeah.
She wasn't just concerned with her child.
Yeah.
She was concerned with all the children. She wanted all the parents to, when she went, I think they got the birth certificates or whatever,
Hmm.
that documentation. She didn't just in a rush, I need to just get mine.
No, she handed them all out, made
She
sure
handed them
everybody
all
had theirs.
out.
Hmm.
And to me, it's like, and even in this aspect of we've got to separate and have to go away, there was a thought of like how we can stay connected, you know, what's important, and stay in communication with each other. And and like that's who she is. But not everybody is the shepherd,
Mm-mm.
you know.
Mm-mm.
Not everybody is the shepherd that's going to do that, that's going to think wide and big about the flock. And there are costs to to being the shepherd, because it's a cost to your family, because the shepherd is not always focused on little family. The shepherd's focused on all the flock. And she really saw her people as a flock. She felt very responsible for them. She felt very responsible.
I'd like to read something because it ties back again to the parables, and because it's in the title, it seems like it's important. And she says, my quote unquote talent, going back to the parable of the talents, is earth seed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what she says. And although I haven't buried it in the ground,
Mm-hmm.
I have buried it here in these coastal mountains where it can grow at about the same speed as our redwood trees. Yeah. So very slow. But what else could I have done? If I had somehow been as good at rabble rousing as Jarrett is, then Earthseed might be big enough, be a big enough movement by now to be a real target. And would that be better? So, I go back to the story of the talents, which is really what I feel like Octavia is asking us to wrestle with.
Yeah.
Is it enough to make with whatever talents you have into something you do? Was it right for God to punish the one that sort of squirreled away his talent because he didn't want it taken and he was afraid? And yet she feels like she hasn't quite buried it the way the one individual in the parable does, and is sort of admonished for it. But she also hasn't done with it what the other rewarded characters from the parable have done either. She's somewhere in between.
She's in between. I think that she is offering another choice. I don't see her squirreling it away. I also think it's an aspect of time too, which she gives. I don't think it's squirreling. I think that your talents take time. Your talents, most are hidden in the beginning, and they need hidden in the sense that not hoarding, not for sharing, but hidden in a sense of like not ready yet, fragile, or whatever the case might be, for it to be shared. Because when you share a talent, I mean, if you think about any talent and you share it, it does need to be at a point where the people that you're sharing it to will take it somewhat seriously.
Yeah.
Where you don't share it so prematurely that you actually ruin the chance of it.
Well, and also if it's a redwood, which grows slow, they are mighty.
They're mighty.
They last the test of time. And while Jarrett might be like this, he'll be dead while that tree will still be living.
Exactly. And I think because it's also like, what is the stuff of your talent? I think like Earthseed and the stuff that makes this up is substantial and nurturing. It's not selfish or self-centered. It's not, pitting one man against the other. It's not divisive. And I think like those are the things. Really what it is in summary is love and care. And those are the things I think, in this book, or the offering, is what lasts. It's what stays.
Yeah.
It's what's going to outlive. And it is slow, and it isn't flashy.
It is a slow burn. This whole book will stay with you for a really, really long time.
It will stay. And
I love that you're making connections to the other book Paradise that you're reading too.
Oh my gosh. I have been in a season, and I'm still in one, where I've been reading Octavia and Toni Morrison at the same time. And it's been challenging in all the good ways. And what's happening to me that I'm trying to like figure out and find to write about is it's this conversation that's now happening between these two women in my mind. And so much about community so much about patriarchy and the woman's role in that as
Yep.
the sustainer, of it. Um and so much about, freedom and agency and choice for women, that and kind of like you have to live for the free woman. One of the things that I'm seeing, the free woman is the woman that lives outside of community and creates something different. Lauren was free.
Yeah, she was.
She is not free.
Yeah.
Lauren lives outside of, norms. Her daughter has chosen to live inside it. And
That's
inside for a woman of what it offers is predictability, there's safety, there is respectability, there is there are comforts, of living inside. Living outside is very dangerous, but especially during these times, it's where freedom could be found for women. And a sense of women being able to be their authentic selves.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are some of the things that and I think about that in my own life, and like, in this question that I do want us to answer about, and that I've been grappling with, about how this work is helping us to be more human in our present world that we find ourselves in. And yeah, and I've been wrestling with this question.
Yeah, I feel like a lot. Look, I have the honor and pleasure of having a friendship with you, and therefore I get to see like your perspectives from various viewpoints, not just on a book. And the one thing that I know that in the journey that we've had together thus far is this notion of learning. And also, I think that we had a speaker one time for the DEI group we were supporting. And the thing that stuck with me was the assumption that everyone has value.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone has wisdom to impart. And
Mhm.
so I feel like for me, the talents, the
Mhm.
echoing of the way in which she saw value in every individual, even those that didn't belong in her community, she still thought they had wisdom and value, but just weren't going to be in this community. And
Yeah.
that was okay. I didn't hear from her like I did with other characters, anger or
Mhm.
othering, or we're going to get them, except for the people who, were,
Right.
were abusers.
Deserved it. Yes.
They deserved it.
Yes.
Um, but as a whole, it was curiosity.
Mhm.
And it was always wondering about. It's funny because I just said that she was so sure, but I
Yeah.
feel like she was sure because she was always calibrating her thoughts.
Mhm.
Is it more this or that? If I did this or if I did that, what would happen if Bengali, got his way and we lived that life? What would it look like if we did this? And so it wasn't a blind ambition. It wasn't
Right.
without juggling and refinement,
Mhm.
but I do feel like this notion of everyone has talents,
Yes.
and how do we encourage everyone to use their talents
Mhm.
in the ways in which they can to make their lives and lives that they love better.
That's great. That's really great. I like that. I like
There's
that.
the scary stuff too that we're not talking about, because
Yeah.
I'd rather live on the side, because there are other ways in which I read this book and thought, okay, if an apocalypse is happening, where am I going to find a piece of land? How am I going to connect with
Yeah.
others? How am I going to make sure we're safe? Like,
Yeah.
what do I need to be doing? How bad is it going to get? I
Mhm.
mean, I would be
Mhm.
lying if I didn't read it with that lens too. The
Yeah.
burning city in
Yeah.
the background here.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's great. I really like that aspect of everybody has wisdom, everyone has talent. to be able to impart. And what if we came towards one another with that expectation of wisdom,
100%.
and
Yep.
from an expecting and joyful and encouraging space of one another as well. I think the thing for me that I'm really taking with me did tie to something that you said, and that is not making it hard for people to be welcomed.
Mm,
You know, Lauren welcomed people. She welcomed the stranger.
yeah.
And she was able, and they didn't have to work hard to be seen, to get food, for things to be shared. You know, she saw need and she did it, but she also saw value in people, you
Yeah.
know, as well, you know, tying to your point. And I think about all of the barriers that we have, how hard it is sometimes for us to connect, especially in areas I think where we live, where it's very resume. It's very like, what do you do versus who are you, or who are you married to, or who are you connected to? And and that's part of our normal air, you know?
Oh,
And even if I would like to say, oh, I don't do that. And this book is saying, no, Chantel, check to see how you do it. It's in your environment, right? So how are you doing it? Are you, you know, like, don't just be so certain, like, I don't do that. And I think that that's something, because we all need a place of belonging.
mm-hmm.
And some of the, you know, most horrific things, and some of the most horrific tyrants, when we look at their childhood and backstory, struggled with belonging and worthiness, such
And they
as
didn't have enough mothering.
they didn't have enough mothering, and they didn't have, and so I just think like that aspect of not not making um not making it hard to actually, for people to experience love and care and see you, how are you, you know, of giving of some time and slowing down life to be able to do that, I think is really important. That's like a lesson that I'm
I feel
taking.
like that is one of your talents, 100%. I think
Mhm.
you create conditions for that purposeful slowing down and curiosity and growth. I think that's one of your, maybe it's your mothering trait, maybe it's just the way, in one of your talents, as we said before. But that, in a day and age right now, nothing about what we do is about slow down.
Yeah. Which
Everything about
yeah,
is like, have you read that? Have you got that? Did you know
yeah.
that? 10 things that you need to know, 20 Amazon things you should buy, 17 things that will happen if you don't put your this on.
Right.
I mean, it started back when I was a kid, and it was like 11 o'clock news, or the socks in
Right.
your drawers killing you, you know, turn you
Right.
into 11, you know,
Right.
but there's this speed of like, what's going
Mhm.
to happen? Even now, like the holidays, the way we experience holidays, it's like, you know, it's January, and you
Yeah.
know, Easter's out, and you know,
Yeah.
as soon as Easter's gone, we've got, you know, the next holiday and the next
Mhm.
holiday, and we have to
Mhm.
experience them quicker and quicker. By the time we get there, we don't appreciate it, because
Mhm.
all of that is eaten up. And that notion of just everything that this is, even slow
Mhm.
down, always be reading, have
Yeah.
books with friends,
Yeah.
have the conversation, because that's how we grow and we learn. We learn
Yeah.
some things by doing. We learn more by connecting,
We do.
to juxtapose what you've
100%.
learned, what I've learned. Yeah.
100%. And another thing I think that is also a big takeaway, which I think is so encouraging to me, encouraging to people, is this aspect that we are creative beings.
Mm,
We are creative beings, and we can create something beautiful and meaningful and necessary under the
worst.
worst
Yeah.
worst conditions.
Yep.
Under so my impossible conditions that I feel like is impossible, which relates to time and resources, even in my impossible, circumstances, Lauren reminds me I can create because
Yeah.
she created such a transformative thing that impacted real people's lives in her world under impossible situations, not ideal conditions, such inconvenience, having to see it also all burned down to the ground, having to burn it down to the ground, right? And she kept, going. And I think that speaks to the confidence that you were talking about, which is different from certainty,
Mm-hmm.
because I think she was confident. She
Thank
was
you.
committed.
That's an
Yeah,
important distinction. Thank
yeah.
you.
She
You're
was
right.
committed to her vision.
Yeah.
She had a vision, and she was committed to moving always towards that vision, no matter what. And so I think part of her way of movement was engaging a whole host of the unknown in questions, because she didn't know for sure. Well, what should I do? Well, what there it was all questions, but she was committed to, I'm gonna keep moving forward towards
And
this vision,
confident that they could
and
get to that
confident
next
that
step.
she could get to that next thing. I
Because
Yeah,
Earthseed was change,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
change,
yeah.
and by changing it changes you.
It
So yeah,
changes you. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh,
and so that's just like for everything, for every idea, that we have, that we're trying to create and bring to the earth in tangible ways. Do it,
purpose.
do
It's
it.
purpose.
Purpose,
Yeah,
it's purpose, and
absolutely.
also it's your purpose, and you have the talent to do it.
Yes, you have the talents.
And so focus more on I have a purpose, and I know I have the talent, and focus less on whatever circumstances that
Yes,
you
I
might be in.
agree. Well,
Circumstances cannot dictate the growth and the birth of whatever it is that all of us are out here trying to do. Yeah.
100%. I wanted to echo a little bit further your focus on creativity, because something else that I thought was interesting was how Lauren suddenly decided that she wanted to learn to draw.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was sort of, so
Yeah.
she's always had an interest in it,
Mm-hmm.
no time like the present. And she found out she had talent for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And she didn't squander that talent either.
Mhm.
She gave it willingly. She
Yeah.
gave it in trade. She gave it to
Mhm.
extend. She gave it
Mhm.
to offer other people joy.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
think she was rewarded by extending those talents. When they come across the older woman who's living alone,
Mhm.
and, she knows she needs to figure out a way to let this woman know that I am not going to hurt you, that we are just really traveling through, but you
Right.
seem like you're in need. How about if we trade?
Right.
We can help you, and can we stay here for a few days?
Mhm.
I was just fascinated with her ability to, in the midst of everything that you're talking about, I want to learn to draw, and I'm just going to
Yeah.
draw. And that she just did it and
Yeah.
got good at it. And
Yeah.
it's that confidence again, too.
It is. And I think that it's something like one of the things I think for the modern woman, for the modern working, woman that has some letters in front of their name, or, has some importance that they feel. When I talk, when I and I always it's a question I always ask, especially women, like, what are your hobbies?
Mhm.
And oftentimes I'll get like a distance, like a pause. I had a thing, but I don't really, put time, into it.
Mhm.
Or, and I think like what that is an example of is there was exploration that Lauren still did with herself. That yes,
Yeah.
in the midst of all of that, I had an interest, so I did drawing. And then that interest of a bud, it developed into a thing to be able to serve her. And oftentimes our hobbies do, they get to serve us, right? But I think like that it wasn't, there's such chaos in her world, but it wasn't all chaos. And it wasn't all on fire. And it wasn't all, you know what I'm saying, hard. And so I think like it's such a
there's still beauty there.
There's still beauty, and there's still parts of you that you need to discover, and there's still things that you just need to try. Why? Just because I can, or just because I want to, not because it's a serious thing. And I think like in areas where it's very type A and it's very serious, it has to be a serious thing in order for you to do it. Or, you know, like in order for it to kind of be approved of whatever, however you're spending your time. And so, yeah, I think that's another lesson of especially being human, because we're always evolving. We're not the same person we were yesterday. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is the beauty of that. And I just finished reading this morning The Book Thief. Have you read that?
Oh, yes.
Just broke me up and tore me to pieces. I was in my bed at like 5:30 in the morning, like, you know. And the Book Thief is a story that's set in World War II,
resilience,
death, and in the midst of, again, another hard time and lots of hard things that happen and tragedies and changes. What's beautiful about humans is that we are natural creators.
Yeah.
You know, we create.
Yeah.
And so to allow the life to do that, but also I think like not having life have to get so hard and desolate before you allow yourself to create, you know, or allow yourself to explore other parts of yourself, or allow yourself to do those things. So that's another lesson. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask you another hard question. So thank you for this. What do you, when you read this book now, I mean, we can't lose sight of the situation we find ourselves in this country. And I'm not trying to be a doomer or sort of go to that extent, but this book is set in this time right now. So the first book opens, I think, in 2020, 2025, somewhere around there. The time that Lauren's in, you know, before the spaceship, which is later down, I think that's around 2030, which is only 4 years from now.
4 years away.
How likely do you think it is? So how prescient do you think that her sort of observation of where we could be as a society, do you think we could wind up in a situation that was sort of unveiled in this book, or actually in both these books? Because it really does start with the first one. Right.
I would say, I think it would be foolish for us to think that we couldn't ever be in a situation where democracy is no longer. Because and the things that, and the potential things that can replace it, and what happens with that, where you have corporations, conglomerates that are just hoarding power, where there's such a huge difference or divide between the haves and the have-nots, and then the fallout and consequences of that, right? And I say that because one of the things that I admire about Octavia Butler is, and that I assume about her based on reading her work, is that she was such a student of history.
Yes.
And so the creative ways in which she's written this story is there are nuances and newnesses. But what happens, it's not new. It's happened several times throughout history in several places, right? And I think in that way, it's just a very human story about what we do to ourselves, right? I think it definitely, I think, is a warning story that that hopefully, I know that it has resurfaced, and there's lots of new readers to the book, old readers returning in conversation, and I think that that's encouraging. I really wish that people, who need to read it, read it and have a conversation, and perhaps maybe they are, and that is lovely. But I would say it's foolish of us, and stupid of us, arrogant of us, a sense of entitlement of us to think that we are so protected from experiencing huge shifts in our world. And we have experienced shifts already, but
Mhm.
depending on um where you are, your security, what you have, right? um you're experiencing it a lot or less,
Mhm.
and I think that we are in an inflection point. I think in our country, and um I am not one who believes that midterms are going to come and whew, all right, it's gonna, things are going to be right sized, or things are going to be right sized enough where there's momentum for real change at the next in the presidential election. I don't ascribe to that thinking, for a variety of reasons. And so I almost would have appreciated, living in this time, I would have almost appreciated a prequel.
Oh, well,
That
I mean, yeah, no, I you bring up a really good point.
like like the
We're
like the subtle signs, because when we
we're
start,
never taught, we're never treated
yeah,
to how this all began.
how did it begin? And
No.
when it starts, we're it's in stuff has already happened.
Yeah, she's in a walled
You're in
community.
a walled
Yeah.
community, which is in itself a point of privilege that we
Yep.
know isn't enough, right?
Yep.
But I would have really appreciated. I think that I would not have had this need if I read this outside of this time that we're currently living in. But because I'm reading it
Definitely.
in this time that we're currently living in,
Yeah.
I am yearning for like a prequel so I could say what happened, what were some of the things that were taking place in forming that was small, you know what I'm saying? That didn't look like warning signs to people. How did we get here? How did you all get here to this place? How did a Jared, right?
Well, I mean, I
Really
did kind of
know.
want to talk about that too, because there always seems to be this sort of white Christian
Mm,
nationalism that is a sort of a steady villain in a
yeah.
lot of these historical
Hmm.
interactions. I mean, this was
Yeah.
certainly the rise of Hitler. This is certainly even the rise of Putin. You
Yeah.
know, it was his backlash against a
Hmm.
country that was seemingly more and more atheistic. And he sort of harnessed
Hmm.
Christianity in order to get power.
Right.
But I do think that there is, in the story of Marcus in particular,
Hmm.
and even in Lauren's father, and of course Lauren is a juxtaposition to those,
Hmm.
but is the whole like, what does Christianity really mean?
Hmm.
And why is Christianity for some
Hmm.
um an both a superiority
Hmm.
or there's a wall, like
Right.
you're not deserving, you're not welcome,
Right.
you're not of our,
Right. Well,
when,
there's
yeah,
insiders and outsiders,
yeah.
yeah, it's all very, fascinating and um s- troubling at the same time. And I feel like um what gives me hope is the contingent of people out there that
Mhm.
sometimes the loudest voices don't ever represent the masses, you know? It's just maybe the loudest. Yeah, God bless America.
God bless
Yes.
America. I saw that
Yes.
comment. Yeah.
Yes. And when I move around and interact with other human beings in my spaces, I'm interacting, I think, like with I think that we have a lot more in common than we have with people who I don't have a lot in common with. And I think that that is a definite divide. And I think that the one of the biggest threats is thinking that there's more of them than there actually is. When we think that we don't have power. So going back to when they burned it down and they had to split, I think that one of the things that kept Earthseed going that she didn't know and kept community was that they knew they weren't alone,
Yeah.
that there were other people, there were other remnants.
Yep.
And there's always going to be a remnant. And I think that that is it. And so even for me, doing things like reading more and promoting conversations and things like this, that's active work that's contributing towards, I think, pushing against some of the energy that's out here,
Is it safe to say that number one, it's obviously, I mean, I think it's meant to be a fool's version of what Christianity is supposed to be, first of all. And second of all, it is an interesting juxtaposition between Earthseed, which feels religious and not religious at the same time, because I do appreciate that, with whatever the organized religion is, there's an ask that you hand over your autonomy to a higher power in the juxtaposition. Whereas in Earthseed, she's like, you are your answer. And when, I think somebody asked, like, well, how do you pray? Like, how do you, she's like, well, you're talking to yourself, because the person that's going to deliver on what it is that you need is you.
I think that that's a belief system, just like Christianity. I do think that in this book, it is a very, it is not of the Christian faith. I think that it is not followers of Christ, right? But so and I think that, so the white nationalist Christians, I think, is
it's power. It's a bastardization.
It's not, we know that Christianity and other religions in other parts of the world have been weaponized, right, for power and for, status. But I think Earthseed too, I see it as a belief system too. The difference is, believe in yourself. You are elevated to God's status. The individual is elevated, I think, to God's status, where, whereas in other, faith traditions or belief systems, there is that the individual is not, on God's status. And I think that what we don't get to see is, how does this all play out?
Well, I mean, I did think, like I'm thinking now, here we are 50 some odd years after the book was written. She did create a redwood. We are still talking about this.
She did create a redwood. She did create a redwood. Yeah. She did create a redwood. And what I don't know is if, like, what did her redwood fully grow up to be? And how was her redwood able to grow up to be? I think, like, did more formal things come along with it? Did there become a time where there was outsiders and insiders and hierarchies and things of that nature? Was it perverted? Was it enough? Was this
Oh.
belief system, was it enough? Or was there like, this wasn't enough. This wasn't the thing. Now that I've gotten here and we don't have the answers, you know what I'm saying to that?
Do you think
But
humans eventually pervert everything to some degree, though? When you use that word, there was like this, like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
yes, yeah,
yeah.
we tend to
Well,
twist
I
it just a
think
little
that
bit.
we
Like, how
do.
far can we move this?
I think that we do, and I think it's really hard not to. And and because I think that's part of being human. And I think that uh from like there was this saying, I don't know who I heard it from. It could have been my sister. Maybe she heard it from someone that says, like, when I wake up in the morning, I have to step out of bed and stomp on my ego, get my ego in check,
Mm.
you know.
Oh, say more
Um,
about that. I really
but
like that.
just
But
to
what
get
about
your
that?
ego in check, where because when your ego is big, you think you know everything. You're also very self-focused. It's all I can see is my ego, my wants, my desires. It's very I focused. So when you know that, like, that's innately in the flesh, I have to stomp on that and submit myself to something greater than me, right?
What a
That helps me
beautiful takeaway.
greater
Yeah,
than myself. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And so I think that um when I spend time with my God, I see greater than Chantel. Able
Hmm.
to lift my head up and pay attention to this and think about this, calm my nervous system. For me, I can't do that myself,
Hmm.
you know. Um, and so, but I think it's very human for us to be fully focused and fully, confident and fully like, yeah, I am the God. Like, yeah, I am the one who can make it, in my life. I am, the one. And so I would, and there are there's some parts of that that's true about that philosophy that I can resonate with. And then there's parts that I'm like, yeah, that's going to trick you though.
Hmm.
And so my kind of curiosity in reading it would be like, hey, does that ever trick you up? Did this
Yeah.
thing, like, this belief, was it solidly good and true and it always served you? Or were there aspects of it where you hit walls? If you did, what were those walls? Like, what did you discover? I think there's lots of interesting, questions. But when you are a child that has been not nurtured by a mother, when you are a child that has experienced trauma, and you are resilient and you have chosen that you are going to live and you're going to live and you're going to survive, you are the change that happened. You can see yourself as resilient, because the other part of this conversation, and then we got to like wrap it up, but there's this: where has God disappointed you or failed you?
Well, but that was Elie
You
Wiesel's
know,
night too. The end,
that's right.
I mean, at one point he says, "Why have
Yeah.
you forsaken me?" Like
Why
he
have you
wrestles.
forsaken me? Where has God? So I think that, there were aspects of little Lauren that before we met Lauren was disappointed
Mm.
by God and failed God. God was not reliant, maybe in a way. But what she knew she could rely on, I can rely on myself.
I can
I
pack
can
my
rely on
bag.
my
I can
own
be
effort.
prepared. That's
I can
right.
be prepared.
Yeah.
I can do it. And so the lesson is about self-reliant. I think the lesson to me that I've seen it as, um, and this is the same type of thing with her daughter. The daughter learned, I can't rely on you, mom.
Yeah.
Right? I
Yeah.
can't, in this kind of connected way. And so I wonder if any of that gets revisited or resolved. But that's what she learned. I cannot rely on you. I'm going to rely on myself. I believe that she believed she needed to have a belief system because she came out of a belief system family. And so, but she needed to have a belief system that she could
Control.
have control over.
Yeah.
and she created something
Yep.
and then led something and is building something and controlling something that she has control over. And
Yep.
so even getting back to the parables, I'm not choosing this way or that way in the parable. I'm creating a choice here that even I'm controlling by kind of doing a middle kind of thing. And I wonder, my wonder about it is, how does that work out for you in the end? What does living that choice out, how does that really shape out? And that's kind of my curiosity, with that. I
I
don't
love
know.
that. I love that. I just want to say, and I know we have to wrap up, but it has been such a joy to read this book alongside you. These two books, really.
Two books.
And I just highly recommend them to anyone. I've gotten a lot of people to read it. A lot of people say I had to put it down. I'm struggling. There's so much, and maybe we almost experience by extension what it means to be hyper empathetic, because the extent to which she puts us through sort of the turmoil of the life that these folks have to live through. You have no choice but to experience it in that way. And so I would just hope people pick them up and read them.
I'm so glad you shared that. I think that when it comes to reading, so I'm getting my sister to read. She actually suggested, so she doesn't really read works like this, but she's going to talk about Wild Seed, which
I wanted to read that.
Octavia Butler book. So we're going to talk about that. But I think I would say to people, even to myself, and we know this about each other in reading it. We both had to sit. I have to sit this one down. I wasn't able to completely just journey through at my pace. I think the book, for me as a reader, set the pace. I had to be very respectful of when the book was like, okay, let's just pause here. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't sometimes when I read, especially if I know I'll chunk it out or let me get through. I'll have reading goals for my day, but I immediately know when I pick up a book and start reading it, oh, I have to submit to you. It's not about and Octavia Butler's books. I know I'm not doing reading goals with this one because I know I'm going to submit to this pacing that the book has for me. And that pacing means me listening to myself, me stopping when I need to stop. That's perfect. That's normal, and it could be for a day. It could be, I think I took a week or so from it was just whoo, let me just sit down. But in the time of way, you're always talking and thinking about it. And I think that that's okay. I like to call, one of my favorite authors of all times is Edwaji Danticat. You'll have to read her. I had the pleasure of meeting her at a writer's conference. And she said, and I love this, she said, I write books for dangerous readers. And I was like, I am a dangerous reader in the sense that I will get into the hard waters of a book that, and when you do that, when the waters it's hard to get into, you're not just running into it oh, it's the perfect temperature and you can just run into it. You have to take your time. Each little splash has to almost orient yourself to the temperature. And I think I would say to people, authors like Octavia Butler, Toni Morrison, Jamaica Kincaid, really your Black writers, especially those who are writing about Black American history and story, it is ease in, step in, let the water splash, and allow yourself a moment to just orient you. And so you might be on the shore for, a minute or two, and that's okay. And then you get into the waters with these writers, and I think your whole personhood is expanded because of it.
So I think so too. That was beautiful. I agree 100%.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for first making me read Octavia. You have done what no person has done before. And so I am so grateful. When you said Octavia, I was like, oh, no. And I'm like, it's not my genre. I knew, but I'm so grateful that I'm so grateful for the assignment. And also, even more than that, I'm grateful for this space for us to have conversation, because it is a book for anyone who is reading it. It is a book that you need to have conversation about. And so, if you're reading this, find somebody, ask them if they will read a book. I will say this too, guys. So I don't even know the number of books with friends that I've done. And this is not the only space that I read books with people. I've not been told no yet when I ask somebody, hey, will you read a book with me? And this includes people that I know who are not book readers. And to date, no one has said no. So ask somebody, will you read a book with me? And I think you get to learn a lot about the person that you are, reading with, and a lot about yourself, and a different way to connect and grow. So thank you, Stephanie, for being the very first friend who said yes to me that they would read a book.
I will say yes to you anytime.
And we will be reading more books together. Next week, Stephanie, you don't know this, and I did not make a thing for it, but I'm gonna just hold it up because the book just came in. Do you see this? Next week, I'm actually gonna be talking with Amy, and she chose this book for us to read. It's called "No One Taught Me How to Be a Man," by Shannon Kearns. And the subtitle is "What a Trans Experience Reveals About Masculinity." So I think this is my first nonfiction on the show. And I'm excited to read this and to have a conversation with Amy about it. So that is on Monday, coming up on the 2nd. So yes. Yeah.
I just put it on my list. Yeah.
Yes, we'll learn a lot, because she's a true feminist. And so, it should be a very interesting conversation. So that is all, you guys. I know this went a little bit longer than usual. Thanks for hanging in there. Montaigne, thank you so much for all your support in the background of things. And thank you guys. If you want to hang out with us and be able to get more information about books with friends or other kind of content that's on my channel, please be sure to subscribe. And if you liked our conversation in this video and you found it useful, we would also appreciate that you like it as well. And I'm also on Substack, where I sit more with my thoughts and I write about characters and just more literary analysis. If that's your type of thing, then please join me over at Substack, and that link will be in the show notes below as well. Until next time, you guys, take care of yourself, get in the bed, huddle up with a book, ask somebody to read a book with you, continue the spirit of books with friends in your, community. And you will be blessed by it. You will be blessed by it. So thanks again. And until next time, stay reading. Bye.